Learn to be super successful. Subscribe to my channel, Meathead.
You'll do a deal in 36 hours. And we had this is a couple of years ago. We had a lady who had a big ranch, and it was oil production, okay. And they were gathering units, big, the big tubs that you put the oil in. And she wanted out. Her husband had died. He fell in his in basket, after 41 years. And every time she drove up to the place, it made her sick to her stomach. She actually loved the old fuck. You won't have to worry about that. Yours will be off with a new guy in 2 weeks. They'll lose 15 pounds. Slim their arse down, and they'll be off with a new guy in 15 weeks. But so the bank led her down the Primrose Path, and then she needed an environmental study. And there's various kinds of environmental studies. So they started off with the one that cost 20 grand, and then nothing. That's fine. And the bank even said they were going to pay for it. But then they got into the deal, and they found out there used to be a gas station on the property. You couldn't see the gas pumps anymore, and I mean toxic shit in the ground and all this. So then they ultimately wanted a big-time environmental study, 200-300 grand, takes 4 or 5 months, and she was distraught. And so the smooth you, is trying to console her. I don't know how he consoled her, but he consoled her, and he says, we don't have to do it this way. We can get done in 2-3 days. How? 100% seller finance? And she didn't want a lawyer, which I didn't agree with. The deal was done. Called up the bank after the deal was done, dollar consideration, and the bank got pissed off because they had already paid up front for the environmental study. So then there was a fight about that, but the deal got done. There was a fight for 18 months, 2 years, about the bank wanted the U to pay for the environmental study. And I said, unless they put you in prison, you're not paying for any environmental study. The bank's a big boy. They can take care of themselves. But you just, and that deal happened to work out well. She left, and they're still paying her. They're probably in the 7th, 8th year of paying her. And she's happy as there. And she's referred a bunch of people to the U in the deal. But the Harvard cases and the Virginia cases, some of them, like the one that you're working on now, you have to interpolate. You have to, come up with reverse engineer. And but so far you're right. So far you're right. For whatever reason you came up with that, you're right.
No, blind hogs.
Yeah, well, but, and I don't know if Irish blind hogs are any smarter than Scottish or English. Okay, so you've come up with that, and you'll notice in the public arena, almost always the multiples are out of this world. Okay, they're just, and when occasionally you'll get a seller that'll has a cousin who's in law school and says, well, this company's selling at 72 times this, and you're giving them 3 times what, or 5 times. There's a big dichotomy there. And the answer is, and I said this in the first seminar, when you're in a liquid market, okay, there's an extremely large premium for liquidity. If you're on the New York Stock Exchange, that's the most liquid market in the world. If you're on one of the Canadian exchanges, which are a lot less liquid, the multiples are much lower. Even in China, there's a difference between liquidity and multiples between Shanghai, Beijing, and Hong Kong. There's a difference. And those differences are because Shanghai and Beijing, even though they're legitimate markets, most of the people that own stock in those are Asian, more importantly, Chinese people. Whereas Hong Kong is more an international market. It's also where the Chinese launder their money from Shanghai to Hong Kong, Beijing to Hong Kong, then Hong Kong to the London Stock Exchange. That's the route. But then once they leave Hong Kong market and they go to the London Stock Exchange, their multiples shrink again. Because even though there's massive liquidity in the London Stock Exchange, there's no laundering. It's legit money. Okay, what next?
So they're putting cash through, are they? Yeah. They're cleaning their money.
Yeah.
Dirty money.
Well, they don't consider it dirty money, but it's not dissimilar to the Colombia drug cartel and a few other of the lads. One of the reasons, supposedly, the property market in Mayfair has been supported the last 30, 40 years is cleaning the money. I mean, a lot of the Mayfair property is owned in Dutch Antilles trusts, etc., where you can't find you can find it out, but not easily. You find out who's really behind it, and then it's normally another trust and another trust, but they're cleaning their money up. And the property market, it's like the Ritz just sold during Corona. The Barclay brothers, who I knew, there was only one left. One's dead now. They were twins. Died, and just before that, they sold it to the Qatar, and for 790 million pounds, and at a discounted level. The rumor has that the Qatar Trust said, "Well, we'll base it on this year's earnings." Well, right in the middle of Corona, here's a check. There's right here, 795 million pounds, and they took it. 18 months later, when they're coming out of Corona, when the hotel was full again, as opposed to Sally and I, at one time, one day we were the only people staying there in the Ritz Hotel. It's worth $1.5 billion, $1.6 billion, and so then they committed through 100% bank financing, supposedly, although they have the money to do it. They were going to double the size of the hotel, so they bought everybody south of the hotel. And they knocked it all down, and the hotel is going 6 stories down, and it's going to take 4 or 5 years to build, and it'll be worth 4 or 5 billion. But when you have the cash, and I've said this before, some of the guys that have some money, they can bridge the gap if necessary. But I don't recommend that. I recommend the stepping stone. And then you have no money in the deal. And it sounds better from the teacher like me. These kids got rich with no money. But 2 or 3 of them had some money, but not any money to speak of. But and when you see the difference in the multiples, your multiples, if you stay long enough and you want to go public, and that's not the greatest end result, I mean, you're going to see that the multiples from the time you buy it at 3 to 5 can be 15 or 20. And so it's not just a simple arbitrage, but I mean, it's an expanded arbitrage where even though you have no money in it, you can get 6, 7 times more money than you paid to begin with. Occasionally when you're on a seller's note, a seller will get pissed off. If the note's long enough and you take the fucking thing public and he sees, I mean, but that's why the doc's staying for 40%, a lot of them. Because they've heard about that kind of shit. They knew somebody, and they said, well, the 40% will be worth 5 times what the 100% was if you stay long enough. But that rarely happens. They don't stay along. Occasionally, when you exit, the docs or whoever will say, we want to roll our equity in your next deal. And so that's a conundrum, whether you do it or not. But if it's in the same general area, healthcare in the vertical, it's a great recommendation when the docs say, we don't want our money. Well, let's roll them again. Then they queue up 2 miles down the road to sell you the business, and most of them will be selling you at 60-40. So the 60-40 works in a lot of different ways that benefit you, although the worst case scenario is you got to buy roughly twice as many companies, because you're only buying 60%. But it's still a great thing. You're not putting up any money. This deal was, what year was this deal? I don't know.
97.
97. 25 years ago. Okay, it was a different world then, but they didn't have any tele-pizza back in, of course now tele-pizza, it tells everything. I mean, you can buy, before Uber and all that stuff. Okay, so would you have done a deal? Yeah? Yeah. It's a no. When you
Looks like they financed it with their own shares, although we couldn't find that for sure. Because the multiple was so high, they could have, paid for it in stock.
Yeah, and normally when it's going to be a share-for-share deal, either both shares go up if the world loves the deal across the board, or one share goes up, normally the shares the company you're buying, and because those shares are going to disappear and they're going to be replaced with more of your shares. If you have to issue more shares or create more shares from reserve, your shares will be normally on a short-term basis diluted even more because the existing shareholders got fucked. We're issuing another 500 million shares or whatever, so obviously your shares are going to be worth less. But once they understand and you perform, the share price will normally go back to where it was and even higher. When you stock split, for example, when Elon, whatever he split for, you're being diluted by a factor of 10. He was trying to take advantage, and he did for a while, of his popularity. And you let the market tell you when you're going to do a stock split. You let the market tell you when you're a public company and you're going to issue more shares. Almost all the time, the shareholders will agree with a stock split. Almost all the time, shareholders will agree with you using the paper to buy somebody else. They don't understand why, but they're depending, sometimes wrongfully, on the fact that the board, with 9 million years experience, yada, 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 has decided to do this. And so they go along with it. But they're always at higher multiples. The only partial exception to that is conglomerates don't sell for these big, huge multiples. A conglomerate, if it sells for 10 or 12 times earnings, that's a big jump. Right now, Nelly is buying companies, at 2 or 3, 4 times because conglomerates, and he's in what is considered boring industries. I don't see how diamond business could be boring, but because De Beers controls, at worst case, 95% of the market, if you believe the publicity, at best case, 75% of the market. But they are the market. When they tell you a diamond is 3,000 a carat, it's 3,000 a carat, or whatever the number they come up with. And when I was in the diamond business many decades ago, I couldn't understand how one company, and it's a monopoly. They dictate it, and they get away with it because they're in the African continent. They're not New York, although they have a big center in New York City. And so, and the market has been run extremely efficiently. Another example of that, Rothschild has been setting the market for gold for 200 or 300 years. And there are some little other markets, but the only real market is what the guy comes in and says, writes on a chalkboard still, this is how much is in an ounce, okay? And they control, and they can either, right now they're talking about $3,000 an ounce, just this morning or last night. Whether that happens or not, it's going to be because Rothschild says so. Rothschild says so. And of course, I might have mentioned the first day, you go to the Rothschild investment bank, everybody thinks that they're Rothschild. They all walk with their nose. I used to tease, how can you see with your fucking nose up in the air? You can't see where your feet are going down. Of course, they didn't think it was funny. A lot of things I've said to them, they were so funny.
Dealing with them as we speak, and that's very true.
Yeah. Jesus, you think they're Lord Rothschild. Yeah.
They're invented the tradition of, they're behind the tradition of offering a diamond ring when you propose. You know that?
No.
And I don't know in what decade, they started a whole marketing campaign.
Yeah, diamonds are forever, that was them.
And then they went a step further. They said, if you really value your significant other, you should offer a diamond ring that's 3 times your monthly salary or 4 times your monthly salary or whatever. And every guy got attached to that.
Sucked into that Venus flytrap.
That's where it comes from.
We're looking at another one here. This Brian Robin Capital. I think it's a SPAC, isn't it? It seems to be.
This is before SPACs. But is this when they're going to go out and raise money they raise money for a fund for them to go find a company to buy? Okay, with the Stanford guys, if I remember correctly, 2 or 3 of them, and they paid themselves, I don't know, 50 or 100 grand each. And they raised money, and they thought that they had enough money for 3 years to go out. No, it's not a SPAC. It's just, and they're always Stanford. If this is the same, I'm sure it's the same kid. Okay, Stanford dropouts. Okay, because there's legendary Harvard and Stanford dropouts make a lot more money than the graduates. Okay, so a couple guys I knew years ago, their sons were geniuses. They had 1 or 2 units to go before they got a degree. They dropped out because they wanted to be part of the clique, you know. And that's an interesting case. This it is the opposite of us. Okay, if I remember correctly, if it's because there's 2 of them similar, they didn't do fuck all. They didn't do any deals. They sucked out of Stanford alumni a bunch of money, and they didn't live the life of luxury. But if you go from a starving graduate student to $100,000 a year, you're living the life of luxury. Okay, they went from 5 sharing an apartment to living the life of luxury. But that's a good case. It illustrates the difference. That's the old-fashioned way. You get the money, not just for the deal, but to get the money to support yourself. I'm not so sure these are so popular anymore. A SPAC, you've got to write a check. But to make the SPAC competitive, the laws were written such that if you don't make an investment, you don't invest all the money, you got to give it back. And again, as I commented yesterday and the day before, a lot of bad deals get done at the end of a SPAC's tenure.
Is it a fixed time period? Or is
Yeah, 2 years. 2 years from the day it closes.